Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Tongues of Fire. And today I get the absolute delight of interviewing my friend Tod Polson, who is he's in animation, he's an animator, designer, and director. Who's created some amazing things, but I think also at his core he's a visual storyteller. So welcome to the show, Todd. It's good to
Yeah,
have you.
thank you. It's good to be here. Yeah.
So Todd, let's start with visual storytelling. When did you realize you were a visual storyteller?
I think from the beginning, and I was always drawing and sketching and doing little books,
Yeah.
even even in elementary school, and fortunately, all through my education in elementary, um, I had a teacher, Mr. Sellers, who encouraged my art. He could see
Yeah.
that was the thing that spoke to me. Um, through middle school and in high school, I had one of the best cartoonists I've ever met, Dennis Freeman.
Yeah.
Um, Took me under his wing, and he saw that that's the thing. And so I started playing with 8 millimeter, 60 millimeter cameras, doing pixelation, doing claymation, doing all those things way back in the 80s.
Wow.
And so it just was a natural progression. And then from there, I went to art school. I didn't know you could make a living as an animator.
Yeah.
I went for fine art, and then I found out there was a school called Cal Arts, which was set up by Disney. And so I was like, wow, I want to do that. And so I applied 3 times, and then finally the last time I got in to the school. So,
Man, that's
yeah,
cool. All right, so I'm going to ask you more about the journey, but let me go back to what is a visual storyteller? Because you said a little bit before we got on camera, you said the thing that you enjoy is the
right.
storytelling. That's the driver, more so than the actual act of sketching.
Yeah,
So,
that's right. So
yeah,
I do enjoy art. I enjoy making things, but I don't create just for creation's sake, for fun. I was having a conversation with a friend yesterday about that, where he asked, "What are you drawing for fun?" And I was like, thinking about, it, I was like, I'm not. In that, everything that I'm creating is related to some sort of story or film project or book
Yep.
project that I'm trying to develop. And so the thing that drives it is that narrative. So a few years ago, I had a friend who had he was making a film, and he asked me to do the color script. That's like the color version of the storyboard.
Yeah.
And but it was top secret, and he says, I can't tell you what the story is, because he had partners and stuff. And I was like, I I can't I can't design the color for your film because I don't know what emotions I'm supposed to hit. I'm not sure what the mood is. And
Yeah.
so I did a couple of drafts, different versions, and I was like hoping that one would work. But without the story, all the art is sort of meaningless. It's sort of like, confetti or something. It's pretty, but it
Yeah.
doesn't say anything in
Man.
itself.
So when did you learn the power of color? Because that's something that's striking me, and you're teaching me things that I didn't know, right? So the intentionality that goes into color.
Right,
And you said, I think you said a little bit ago that the two things that create the biggest connection to the audience are the music and the color.
right.
Um,
Emotionally, yeah,
yeah,
for film. Music is the most important. I think music is half of a film, the
yeah,
sound and music design.
yeah,
Without that, you're sunk. But visually, the most important connection emotionally is color.
yeah,
And it just speaks to us on a very primal level.
yeah,
And so I started using color when I started working at Chuck Jones in the early 90s. And my mentor was Maurice Noble, the great Warner Brothers art director. And my portfolio going in was black and white. I was kind of afraid of color in college. And so my whole portfolio was black and white. I had been studying woodblock, woodcut artists of the 1930s, like Linda
yeah.
Ward, Rockwell Kent, those kind of artists. And so Maurice was going through my book, and he's like, "Well, I see you've been studying woodblock, printmakers." And in fact, he had known some of these guys back in the day. And so he says, "I think you'd be pretty good at color." And so I didn't know that at the time, but the hardest thing to learn when you're doing color design is to learn to control value. And
Yeah.
so he could see that. So for him, the color was just kind of the icing on the cake. If you could get the values right, you could put any kind of pleasing color harmonies or design in it. It will probably work really well. And so that's how I started working with color
Wow.
professionally. Yeah.
Wow. So how long did it take you to learn? And what was the process of
It
learning?
was trial by fire because they said, okay, here you go. We've got this new film we're doing. What do the characters look like? So I would do versions. The first film I did color on was a thing called Another Froggy Evening
Yeah.
for Chuck Jones. It's a terrible film. Sorry, Chuck, but it looks great. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so um, anyway, so I started. They just gave me the cells of Chuck's drawings, and I would be doing different color things and trying things out, and so through that I learned what worked and what didn't. And I had a great Maurice was looking in over my shoulder, of course.
Yeah.
Um, Michel Breton was art directing. He's an amazing uh, designer. He was great.
Yeah.
I gave him a bad time. I was like a 20-year-old punk, you know, and so I thought I knew more than he did.
Yeah.
And he was very patient with me, but we've become friends since then. But
Yeah.
yeah, no, it was a great. Just you just had to do it, you know, had to make it work, and so that was the greatest learning experience, I think.
So has it become instinct now where you can instinctively read a story, understand a story, and then apply
Partially,
color?
yeah. And I always Maurice taught this too, but I think that good color, good design in any artistic, doesn't matter if it's animation or not, it's partially instinct and partially research and all these other things that influence your decisions. So throughout my career, I've worked a lot on cultural stories, like on the Secret of Kells for Cartoon Saloon, some of the movies for them. Jorge Gutierrez, we worked on a lot of Mexican themed stories. The 21 that I just finished. How I approached that is I designed it instinctually, but you know, it's inspired by Coptic iconography. So there's this
Sure.
centuries of meaning in the colors. So the blues have certain meanings, the yellows have certain meanings. So you go in with instinctual color, but then you tweak it depending on what all this cultural baggage is that's attached to those colors. So it's really ping ponging back and forth with left and right brain, right? Intellect with instinct.
So we're going to jump into the 21. I think that's your most recent
Yeah,
uh,
that's right. We just finished it a
completed
few months
project, the
ago. Yeah.
21 or the 21 Martyrs. And so we're gonna dig into that a little bit later,
Okay.
um, and do some extended time there because there's just some fascinating, beautiful things to learn and to hear from that story that you have. But I think the next thing I want to know, what I hear as a theme, is that you had really good mentors.
I did.
Like I can tell
I
you
had
appreciate,
amazing mentors. Yeah.
yeah. And so can you talk about the impact of mentorship in your
Sure.
in your life?
Yeah, definitely. One of the reasons I went back, I got my bachelor's degree, took a few years off, and then I went back to study with Jules Engel. And Jules was one of the great designers of the 1950s and 60s, even before then. He was one of the big major voices at UPA, United Production Artists, which they did very avant-garde type of animation in the 1950s. That's what they're mostly known for. And so I got to study under him for my master's thesis, and at the same time I was working with Maurice. So I
Yeah.
had these dual mentors that hated each other's guts but loved me. So, so I was trying to please both of them, and so in a way I learned a lot that way, but
Yeah.
mostly what I learned is I need to follow my own instincts and please myself. And that was the most important thing I learned from that project is as great as your mentors are, you still have to go with what you think is true and
Yeah.
sincere and is yours, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an incredible lesson to
Oh
learn.
man.
That's interesting. And I think that's actually very important important for people to hear, because I think it is important to have mentors
It
for the
is.
people that
Yes.
are watching and listening. That mentors are maybe the ultimate accelerator
Yes.
in terms of growth and wisdom and maturity. But there is a point at which there's a place where no mentor can lead you,
Right.
right?
That's
And
right.
that's where I think you're describing, like, if an art to be an artist is to be fully who you are and
That's right.
not anyone else. Is that true? I think I'm
No,
saying
it's
something.
true. In fact, when we first started at Warner Brothers, so there was this long history of what Maurice Noble had done with Roadrunner and all these great cartoons, and the way he stylized trees and the way he stylized rocks and things. And so when we first started, I had his art pinned up all over my wall as inspiration. And he came in, he saw it, he was so angry, he ripped it off the wall. And he goes, "That's what I did. I want to see what you do. I want to see
Yeah,
how you see the world. I want to see how you interpret this story." And so I was like, "Okay, Maurice, I'll do my best." So
yeah,
he didn't want me to copy him. He didn't want me to be a Xerox of him. He didn't want me to become him.
yeah,
And so one of the big things that he did in the very beginning is we started traveling. So he took this mentorship thing way beyond what you would expect, like
yeah.
really old time medieval kind of mentoring. Um, and so we would go to places like Indonesia where we would study with a master shadow puppet maker. And we would go to Turkey and look at Turkish miniatures and look at the meaning of it was just like the most amazing education. And he wasn't looking at other films, he was looking at folk art. That's the thing that inspired him. What
Wow.
colors do they use in folk art? Why do they use those colors? Why do they use those patterns? What is the meaning of all these things to that culture? And so when I started working on films in Ireland and things, I took all those lessons and applied it to the films I was working on. So it's still me, but also through the filter of this history and this culture and all these other things that influence the design, you know?
Yeah, right. Because you soak them in, and it becomes a part of you in some way,
Right.
right? A part of what you're working with.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, Man, I'm trying to imagine how old were you when you're getting taken to Indonesia, and
Like 24, 25,
yeah, man, you must have just been wide-eyed and so excited to.
Yeah, it was just amazing, and um yeah, I didn't know how special it would be until years later, and I was like, "Holy cow." Because I didn't know. I thought that's how everybody, learned.
Yeah,
You know what I mean? It was just
yeah,
like, "Oh, this is how it's done."
yeah,
And so I don't do those with my students, not yet anyway, but
yeah.
I still try to take those lessons and bring them into the classes. So I have all my old, shadow puppets from that time. I bring them in and make them talk about it and try to analyze why they're doing certain things. And I have my students pick a culture and a time period and then try to figure out what influenced those and why they look the way they do and things like that. Because otherwise they're just referencing 90s animation or whatever's popular on YouTube. It's like it's not very deep.
Yeah. Yeah. So is there a moment from all this, right? So there's traveling, I mean, it sounds like, man, what a rich
Oh man, yeah,
story, right? That you've been blessed with in
so
terms of,
blessed. Yeah.
right? Like just being molded as an artist. Is there a particular moment that you can remember, that um called you further, into artistic excellence? That's a tough question, but
It was. I was called to missions as a teenager. I went
okay.
forward. I had come to faith when I was about 8 years old,
Okay.
and I went forward for missions. I just felt like, and I had been drawing on the whole time, and I felt that basically when I was like 12, 13 years old, I go, I'm going to go to these cultures. I'm going to draw what I find there, and then I'm going to, it was like that whole. I don't know what I was thinking, but. Um, it never happened and then when I met Maurice, I started, and I was like, okay, I went to the International Mission Board and I applied there. They accepted me, but they didn't want to use art or animation for ministry, for missions. And I was like, they said, well, if you go get your master's degree, maybe you can start something else up on your own to do that. And
Yeah.
so I got into student loan debt. And so I kept working and I kept working. And now I'm thankful that I did, because I got to meet all these amazing people and work on all these great projects. And then once I was going to go over to Ireland, I was hired as a creative director there, and my family was going to go over for long term. I'd been going there off and
Yeah.
on through the years to help on projects, but it was at that moment when I felt God going, you know what? It's time. It's time for you. And I was like, but this is the company that I've always wanted to work for, and they're like it's like I could have a job for life, and it's like, no, it's time. So we went back to Thailand. That's where we'd been living, and off and on,
Yeah.
and without a job, without anything, and then started meeting these people and these different missions organizations and artists, and uh, that's when it didn't make sense, but it felt right.
Yeah.
And so that's how I got involved with pictures like the Prodigal and
Yeah.
the 21 and things like that.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Okay. All right. So there's something really, really interesting and cool here. So I'm going to go back to that kid, right?
yep,
You get born again at 8 years old,
yep,
and then you feel this call to mission, right? This call to missions. And so then you step forward and you step into missions.
right,
But your idea of missions has to do with art,
right,
right? And there's no there's no place for you
right.
to do
That's
that.
right.
Can you tell me a little bit more about what that kid saw, what was in that kid, like missions and art and just what did he want? What did he want to do? What was he seeing at that young age?
I think it was a bit of confusion. I it was a journey. It was a struggle, and the thing that was amazing about reading Maurice is that when he was a teenager, he had felt a call to missions,
Yeah,
but he had said no.
yeah,
So he had gone on and he had been praying. I think he'd been saved, and then he got way far from his faith. He
yeah,
basically, it wasn't really a part of his life, but he recognized that in me. And I think that's one reason our connection was so deep. His
yeah,
uncle had set up a leper colony in Thailand. And
yeah,
so he idolized his uncle, and his uncle had sent him batiks and all this like textiles and art from Thailand throughout the
yeah,
years, and it was something that had really inspired him. And so I just think it was ironic, because I had helped him write his book about some of his philosophies and stuff, and his prayer as this young boy about using art for missions. He had a similar vision,
yeah,
and
yeah,
so he didn't, but now his philosophies and his ideas are being used by these people in this book that I helped put together. And so
wow,
in a roundabout way, God is using his
yeah.
experiences to tell these stories, these important stories that in missions and all these different things. Yeah.
So how do you use art for missions? How does one utilize art for
Well,
missions?
there's lots of ways. How I feel called is telling stories.
Yeah,
And some of the stories that have moved me, I got away from faith. In my 30s, I struggled with my faith for a few years. I had gotten away from God, and the thing that brought me back was reading these stories. Hudson Taylor
yeah,
and um, Fox's Book of Martyrs,
yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
all these stories about these men of faith, modern men of faith.
Mm-hmm.
And then it got me back into the Bible and got me back
Yep.
into my relationship with God. And
Yep.
so those stories that moved me are 21 is one of those kinds of stories.
Yes.
Those are the stories that have drawn me and bring me to God, to me personally, to God, closer to God.
Right.
And I feel that those same stories could bring a lot of people closer to God. And so
Yep.
I'm not saying I would do just those stories, but those are the
Yeah.
things that move me. Um,
Yeah.
and how
Yeah.
God can use anybody in the simplest things to do great things and to change lives for the better.
No, I see it. I see it. We said we were talking a little bit earlier before we got on camera, and I said, I believe that we give the gift
Yeah,
that was given to us,
right.
right? And for some reason, that's the most potent gift that we have to give, right? So for me, it's um, it's a form of mentorship and self
Yeah,
discovery, right? Like God gave me a gift of showing me my potential, or showing me that I was loved as I am,
yeah. That's
and
important.
to not try to be someone else, right? He gave me that gift. And so like that is a gift. I have a fire in my belly to give that gift to other people. I wrote a whole book about it called The Superpower Quest, right?
That's awesome.
I love self-discovery. But there's God gave you a certain gift, it sounds like, of story and storytelling.
And and mentorship
Yeah.
because Maurice had given so much of himself.
Yes.
I I feel that I have to pass that on. To
Yeah.
keep it would be a sin,
Yeah.
actually.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
And so God blessed me with these amazing experiences. I was born at the right time in the right place to meet these great, amazing artists, and to be at a time when this thing, I think we're at the cutting edge of animation and art as ministry tools.
Yeah.
We're kind of the pioneers of this new movement, and in the next few years, it's going to explode. It already is
Yeah.
exploding.
Yeah.
Um, but I feel even my kid, I'm teaching at the University of Texas in Dallas right now, and um, all my students, whatever their faith is, want to pass on that because I think God's infused in that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
and he's the ultimate artist, the ultimate creator, and he gave us these tools, um, to kind of describe our world. And
Yeah.
I don't know. I think it's important. Yeah.
Oh, there's a huge conversation to be had there. I'm debating whether we're going to have that one now. Because yeah, the idea that art and animation as ministry tools,
Yeah.
right? Like there is something so beautiful inside of that idea, because I think that we thought the Western mindset, we thought that ministry was one thing, that
Right.
ministry was telling people how to behave, telling people what to do, telling people the specific little minute steps to take to get saved, right?
Right.
Like we really kind of skewed that way.
We did. Yeah.
And and folks really kind of got tired of getting beaten with that stick
Yes.
of right. But the thing about art, and for me poetry, poetry is my art form.
Yeah.
Poetry bypasses the mind
Right.
and goes to the heart,
Yes.
or connects with the emotion. And so you can have a whole different conversation with art than you can have
Good.
with discourse.
That's right. And I think the best animation, and I think that's why the 21 resonates with so many people, is
Yeah.
because it is poetry. It's not telling people what to think. It's not preaching. It's just like,
Right.
this is what happened, and God used this. It's up to you to interpret it,
Yes.
and that's why I love poetry too. I
Yep.
think that it speaks to something much deeper
Yep.
than can be explained.
And it preserves the dignity of the person you're
Right.
talking to,
Yes.
right? Like it's one thing for me to come up to you and say, you need to change. I know how you need to change, right? Like
Right. Yeah.
change in these ways, like, and then there's something else that's, I don't know, man. For me, it's more like I want to be transformed by the love of Jesus.
Yes.
Like really, like not like transformed in such a way that that's just what people experience when they're around me, whether I'm talking or not.
Right.
Right?
Yes.
Like, and I don't want to shortcut it, because I think transformation calls forth transformation, or invites
Sure.
transformation. Um,
I agree.
and so art, man, art is the perfect instrument
Yeah.
to express the inexpressible transformation or beauty that you've seen
Yeah, that's right.
in a way that the heart can't deny, even if the mind does.
the heart recognizes truth, that it recognizes something that's sincere and deep and holy,
Yeah. Yeah.
whether you are faith or not. You see those things in nature and the people around you in a moment.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've started noticing that sometimes I experience church as much or more with people who don't believe
Yes. Yeah. I agree.
as I do with people who do. Right. And I don't know what category to put that in, but that's just something that's starting to happen when you're aligned with people who are mutually seeking to take life seriously and seek
Right.
truth, even if they haven't come to your same conclusion.
That's right.
There are
It,
plenty of
it's
promises. Yeah.
And I think a big part of our faith is not the final destination. It's, with David, with Paul, all these great people that in the Bible, it's their journey, right?
Yeah.
It's how they react to these things. It's their search, their seeking hearts. It's their desire for truth. That's the important part. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Yep. I do. And I think maybe, and life changes and the world changes.
Yeah,
And I think we're in such a strange world now where
it is. Yeah.
we could even get into the shifts that are happening. Like there are just crazy shifts. We have this crazy shift towards postmodernism
Yep.
that really kind of, I don't know, the last 5 decades or something like that
Yeah.
really kind of characterized the trend. And now there's starting to be a reaction against
Yep.
postmodernism, like, and the hopelessness of it. And, and how do you minister in your age, right? Like we've all
Right.
got to, it's not the same
That's
in
right.
every age. And so something here with art, man.
And I think you bring up a good point as well. Is um, the kids I'm working with, in school, they see the world in a very different way than I did when I was
Yeah.
their age, and I do. So you give them tools to find those. You don't tell them how to do it. You give them the tools to learn how to analyze this art, how to
Yeah.
express themselves,
Yeah.
and to be sincere. And with this group especially is being influenced by more things than we ever were as
Sure.
young people,
Yeah.
just bombarded from every side, and then teaching them how to sift through these things to know what is true for them and not
Yeah.
be influenced by everything that comes in.
Yes. Yes. That is the skill set, right? Like the ability to decide,
Yeah,
the ability to prioritize and differentiate because it's just a constant stream
it's
of
crazy. Yeah.
input and stimulation, right? And gosh, man, we need to know how to even get quiet and even be ourselves.
Yeah, that's right.
Dude, all right, this is beautiful. So can you tell me a little bit about the 21 project and most people watching are not going to be familiar with the story necessarily
Sure.
or so can you talk through the story and then your experience with that project?
Sure. So the 21 is based on a video that ISIS put out in 2015,
Yeah.
um, where they murdered basically 21 Coptic Christians on a beach in Libya. And a lot of people remember they're all dressed in orange jumpsuits with
Yeah.
ISIS standing behind them. And when it came out, it rocked me as well.
Yeah.
I remember it distinctly, and I was like, "Wow, what is our world coming to?" Little
Yeah.
knowing that would I would I would be working on the project and getting to know the families and all these
Wow.
things. But what the thing that struck me even then was the men's faith. They had an opportunity to deny their faith
Mm-hmm.
and they didn't. And so they were filmed on camera showing their testimony. ISIS unwittingly even showed them praying. I didn't realize that at the time, but
Yeah.
later I was like, "Oh, they actually are praying to God."
Man.
And so then they die. And so the Coptic community, of course, they were devastated. I mean, it was horrible. A huge part of their community had been killed. But after those first few days, now it's been a celebration. And the wives and children and parents of those men that I've come to know, I was struck by their forgiveness. And they're basically their message, because I asked them, I said, if we make this film, what is the message that you want to put forth to the world? What do you want to say to the world? And basically they said, we don't hate these men. Of course, they killed our husbands, sons, fathers, but we love them, and we want them to come to know Christ. We don't want them to burn in hell.
Yeah.
We want God to use this moment and the lives of these men to further his kingdom, and he has been. And so for them, it's a great celebration. It's a great honor to have them filmed.
Yeah.
Not only just a news report. So that became the real backbone, spine
Yep.
of the story.
Yeah. Yep. And so what was your role with the story? Like kind of what work were you doing?
Yeah, so I wrote it and directed it and designed it.
Hmm.
Um, but it was a process. I didn't know much of anything about Coptic iconography,
Yep.
so I was able to work with iconographers from the Ukraine, from Serbia, from Egypt, of course. And so to learn that, we talked about color, just learning about how much symbolism
Yeah.
in color, in shape, and all these things. So it took 5 years in total,
Wow.
mostly because I wanted to make sure I got it right.
Yeah.
When you make an animation and you have, like, we had 70 people, and you have to commit something to film and have this whole crew working on something, you better make sure it's right.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that was a big weight on my shoulders, because for the families, this is their legacy. These are the people they love. This is their testimony. And, they may use this film for decades and decades into the future. And so for me, not being Coptic, not being from that region,
Yep.
it was a burden, in a good way.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so God put the right people in the right places at the right time throughout the production.
Yeah.
The story itself is based on interviews with the family,
Hmm.
with the church, with ISIS guards that had been captured and were in prison. Um, so the story was told from both sides, and I tried. Of course, I'm Christian, but I tried to be neutral in the telling of that. I tried not to put in my own thoughts and my own feelings, which is hard to do,
Yeah.
and try not to sway people one way or the other, but
Yep.
just, these are the facts. This is what happens according to what I was told. It didn't, and there's miracles in everything. And people have asked me, well, did that happen? I said, well, the people that were there felt that it happened. So for me, I put it in there. It didn't matter what I felt, what I
Right.
thought,
Right.
so, um, for some people that's been very difficult, because in America, especially, it's very interesting. Miracles are like, we have a lot of skepticism about miracles.
Yeah.
In the Coptic community, it's expected. They're looking for miracles. They expect miracles. And so that's one of the biggest differences I noticed.
Yeah.
Just their relationship with God is very different. And,
Yeah.
even in the Muslim community, I've had people that have told me they've had visions of Christ in dreams.
Yeah.
And, yeah, I'm working with a group from Iran, former Muslims here in Dallas, and some of their stories just give me chills, just their conversion stories and how they met Christ, and it's like, that's incredible. There's some amazing stories. So those are the things
Wow.
that get me excited.
Yeah. And those are the stories you want to tell,
That's right.
right? But you want to tell them visually in a way that creates the emotional engagement,
That's right.
right? And moves people forward, transforms people.
Yeah, that's right. And I can't do that as a filmmaker.
Mm.
It has to be through God to
Right.
make that kind of connection. So if you
Right.
get people are going to connect through God through a film or a project or poetry, he has to be invited to be there. And I think sometimes as Christian artists, and I was this way too before this project, where I would do it and I would pray that God would bless it. But the way that the Coptic iconographers work, in fact, all the iconographers I worked with, they pray before they start. And each phase of paint and drawing, they pray over it and
Wow.
invite God to
Man.
be part of it as a collaborator. And for me, I could tell the difference once. once we started getting shots back, I'm like, wow, this is different,
Yeah.
And so I learned a lot from this project in that way. That's probably the biggest lesson I learned, actually.
So how would you state that lesson? Like let's spend a little more time on the lesson you learned.
Just inviting God to be actively involved in your art. And
Yeah.
to now, it doesn't matter whether it's a commercial for cereal or as a Christian artist, for me to be it's like Samson, right? When
Yeah.
Samson was doing his own thing, he was a failure. But as
Yeah.
soon as he invited God, as soon as then he was strengthened with a strength that was way beyond what he could have done as just a single person.
Yes.
And I think as artists, by inviting no matter what we're doing, it doesn't matter if we're art or just our marriage, inviting God to be a active participant in those things. And I had never thought about that before. I'm sure a lot of
Yeah.
people, that's just natural that they would do that. But for me, I always had kind of a separation, a little bit,
Right.
compartmentalize some parts of my life.
Well, the sacred and the secular, right?
Right.
We have this
Yes,
idea that there's sacred things and that there's secular
that's
things.
right.
That's so interesting. That's a very recent development for me. I was a pastor for 10 years. I was a pastor, a parent, and
Yeah.
a owner of a company, working in a company. And I about 3 years ago, I had to step away from being a pastor, and it created a crisis for me because I had so much of my identity attached to that as my way to connect with God or as my way to be approved by God, or I didn't realize it at the time, but there was some baggage there, and it was through a course of three years that the Lord began to teach me that I don't have to be on a pulpit,
Right.
right? I don't have to be I can have church here. I can have church in a business meeting, right?
That's
Like
right.
that because he is as present with me outside of the walls of the church or outside of my prayer closet. He is as present with me in a board meeting.
That's
He
right.
is as present with me on a Zoom call, right? Um, to where it's like I arrive at the same conclusion,
Yeah.
you know, which is it's a beautiful conclusion. So going back to the 21, how long of a film is this?
It's 13 minutes with
Okay,
credits.
13 minutes with credits.
Yeah.
And then can you tell me anything about the responses of the actual Coptic community
Oh,
to
well, so we shared it in February. We shared it with the family. It was the 10th anniversary of the men's death.
yeah,
So we screened it there in the church that they built
yeah.
in memory of the 21, and the remains of the 21 and their bloody jumpsuits are downstairs under this like glass case and stuff. So it was a very powerful moment. The mothers are there, the
Whoa.
children, the parents. We
That must have been so scary. That must have been so scary, man.
It
Maybe not.
was.
Was it?
It was. Yeah. I I was sick, and I wonder if part of that was because just of I felt there was like a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
Because if they didn't like it, then it was just like, you know. But
Five
they
years,
loved it,
right?
and we were screening it, and of course a lot of tears, a lot of emotion. Some of the women there were going, "Habibi, my baby," you know.
Mm,
But when it was over, they loved it, but they said it's too short.
yeah.
And it's not violent enough. I had worried about the violence. They actually
Yeah.
wanted more violence. I had cut
Mm,
out a lot of detail of what had happened, and they said, no, we want the world to know everything that our sons went through, because we want people to know the sacrifice they made.
wow.
And so for them, they wanted more, and they want a full movie. And I was like, well, this is what we have right now.
Yeah.
But they loved it, and they were very supportive. Um, Jonathan Rumi came on as a kind of an executive producer, so he's been helping. Jonathan, of course, is the Christ, Jesus in the Chosen. Um,
Oh, okay. Really? Okay.
And so
Wow.
he's,
Really?
yeah, so he's half Coptic Egyptian. So his father had grown up in Egypt, um, and so he has this very personal connection
Yeah.
um, to the Coptic community there in Egypt. So for him, um, it was something that when he saw the film, he got involved and said, "Look, I want to be part of this, um, and I want to help get this out into the world." And so he's been very generous with
Wow.
just helping do that. Yeah.
So what's been his role with the project? Can you tell a little bit more about that?
Well, mostly, mostly it's just been that he's been getting people to look at it.
Yeah.
He's mentioned it a few times. He's talked about it. He was there when we were screening it with the families.
Oh, he was there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Which
Great.
which is very strange because because for security reasons we didn't announce anything that he was
Yeah.
involved or anything. So when he was wandering around these ancient churches, a lot of the children are there, and they go, "Wow, Jesus is here!" These so all these kids are following him, and
That's
because The
crazy.
Chosen is huge in Egypt, it's a big,
Yeah.
it's very successful there and very popular. Yeah.
Wow. So have you got? I'm assuming you've got to
Oh yeah,
meet.
sure. Yeah.
Oh, wow. That's what's he like?
Oh, um, he's a really nice guy. He's a sweet guy. And the thing that struck me about him is how much he prays.
Yeah.
Like I've seen the ads with it, he's talking about some of the
Yeah.
prayer things he's involved with. That's the real deal. He is a man of prayer.
Wow.
Um, it's very
Yeah.
strange. Every time we've had a screening, and not just in Egypt, but every screening in Egypt, we would have technical things happen, and I don't think that was accidental.
Yeah.
Um, the projector wouldn't work, or
Yeah.
the something wrong with the file, or even in the church when we were screening it for the families, it was just like, and the first thing that Jonathan would do is he would like kneel down and he would just like start praying every time that happened, just so that I think for the screening, but also that God would speak through the
Yeah.
film itself. And so
Yeah.
yeah, just yeah,
Oh, it's so
it's
cool.
been great having him involved with that.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Oh, man, it has been a joy interviewing you, and I do feel like I always feel this. I feel like it's just we could do 2 hours or 3 hours, but we're coming to the end of our time. Uh, but I would say, what advice would you have for Christian artists who are seeking to balance their art with lives of busyness and plenty of distractions and all those kinds of things? Like what would you say as a mentor and a guide to us who are seeking to glorify God through art?
well, it's something that and you brought it up, and it's something I really struggle with, and that's discipline.
Yeah.
And I think just trying to find time, because God is usually the first thing to go
Hmm.
for me. I get
Hmm.
involved with my family, I get involved with my work, I get involved with
Hmm.
my art, and I tend to put God on the back burner sometimes. And
Yeah.
that's the moment that He reminds me that I need Him.
Yeah.
When things start to fall apart, it's like, okay, God, Um,
Yeah.
and I think just working hard at your craft to learn as much as possible when you're young,
Yeah.
um, before you have these other responsibilities.
Yeah.
But even once you do, just learning to, you know, one of the things that I happened to me, and it's one of the greatest regrets I have. Um, when I was doing missions work,
Hmm.
I would have to do a full-time job as well, just to support my family and things. But then my nights and my weekends would be dedicated to missions and to doing my films and doing those things. And I realized too late that I had been ignoring my family,
Hmm.
and the thing that was actually really important, I had put them on the back burner because which God isn't ever going to call us to do that.
Yeah.
God isn't going to call us to put our family behind work, you know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And so for me, it took losing them basically to realize that my priorities were kind of messed up, you
Yeah.
know.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was one of the other great lessons I learned from working on the 21. Just how important God is, and if God is first, then the
Yes.
others things kind of work themselves out because He speaks to your heart. If you're close to Him, He says, "Look, Todd, you know what? This weekend you need to go spend time with your family and not you don't you don't need to finish sequence 6 today." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So
Yes.
um, anyway, it's always that finding that balance has always been a struggle from the very beginning of my career, and I think it's only through God that you're going to be able to find that, at
Yeah.
least for me.
Yep. Yeah. Walking intimately with God,
Yeah.
abiding in Christ. Um, I love that. I love, and that our, whatever our art is, it's the outflow.
Yes,
The greatest art is going to be the outflow of authentic relationship,
that's right.
right?
I agree.
Oh man, thank you for being vulnerable with us. You
Well,
just have,
I just don't want anyone else to have to learn it the hard way,
yeah,
um, because I see it. And I think just naturally, a lot of us are ADHD or whatever. We get so focused on our message and our mission that everything else sort of falls away,
yeah,
including God sometimes.
yeah,
And so I don't know. I think it's just an important thing. We just need to talk about it sometimes. And yeah,
yeah. We do. I mean, and that's what makes a good mentor, right? Is you're willing to share your actual life
yeah,
with people. Because what good is it if you haven't, if you're not speaking from experience,
yeah, that's
right?
right.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah, 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 yeah. Well, just can't say enough. It's like words cannot contain. It's been glorious. It's been um I just see I see a simplicity inside of you. I see a seriousness of the faith inside of you. I see your love for Jesus is evident, and you've blessed us all by being
Well,
with us.
thank you.
So,
Yeah, it's
so
awesome.
thank you.
And this is the stuff I love talking about. So it's a pleasure always. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll leave some links to some of your work
Okay.
in the notes and in the article, and then I'll let you know once this releases. But thanks for joining us, and everybody, we'll see you next time for
Yeah.
Tongues of Fire.
Right.